Now we're entering the pack rat route to the Escarpment Trail. Up in this direction. And if on the other hand you stayed on the trail we've been on, the Acastus Trail, you can find an entrance to that trail right below the Spring Mountain Visitor Gateway, which is right there, and then you can see the pathway leads down to these trails. And then above, here's a better view of Harris Mountain. Then over to the right, Griffith Peak, and then the south ridge of Kyle Canyon, just to the right of Griffith Peak. And heading up the Pack Rat Trail now toward the escarpment. A more aerial view of the Spring Mountains Visitor Gateway. As we ascend the Escarpment Trail, and definitely a healthy initial ascent from the wash below. And finally, regarding the plants that I've mentioned, I promised juniper, and here we go. And you can tell the juniper in part by the stringy bark. Every plant has its zone. Evidently, this is where junipers like to be. And here we are on a high point. Gets a lot higher, I believe, on the Escarpment Trail. And I don't know, I thought this might have been composite rock. Some of it is, and some is solid limestone. Harris Mountain, straight ahead, but you can see the escarpment. Would be formed by tectonic shifts in the earth. Okay, let's continue upward on this trail. Here's a good example of the pointed leaf manzanita with the reddish bark. There you have it, in bloom. Another example of the juniper, and here we can see the stringy bark I was talking about a moment ago. Better example. Continuing along the Escarpment Trail. Here's some of that composite rock that I mentioned earlier, cemented together through calcification. It's a lot of sediment that that washed down from the cliffs above. And I think that a lot of these cliffs up ahead, up above us, are made of this sediment. We'll look for more examples as we get closer. I'm still not entirely sure whether we're looking at solid limestone or composite rock, but I'm thinking that I'm leaning toward this being composite rock that we're looking at. As you can see, it's hard to keep a trail, even if it was originally wide asphalt in this area, because everything is so much in motion. More composite rock around us that is washed down from the cliffs above. And if you look closely, you can see the different rocks that make up what looks like a huge boulder. It's actually composed of a number of rocks cemented together through calcification. And then here you see pieces all around us. Yeah, you got to watch out if you're climbing a cliff made of this material, because you don't know what's loose and it's going to fall, and what presents a good hold. And look at this. Wow. Yeah, this entire chunk may have washed down from above. And you see the different rock that's cemented together. And then here's another piece in the process of sliding down the side of the mountain. We're at near the base of Harris Mountain. And here we are right up against the cliff wall, and you can see some composite rock here. And yeah, it's really interesting. There's composite rock a good way up, maybe mixed with limestone, we don't know. Here's one of those limestone caves that are at the base of these formations. Of course, I don't think this one goes very far back. But yeah, look at the composite rock here. You see a mosaic of different stones. Pretty much up against the escarpment right here. And then, yeah, look across the way. And there you can see different rock. Of course, if you were closer, you'd see the difference, but there are these cliffs to the south of Fletcher Peak we've been looking at before. These are limestone, not composite. So let's continue on. Wow, looks like climbers are indeed using this escarpment as a climbing area. Look at that. Wow. Yep. not on my bucket list, but evidently they enjoy it. And you can see some of the caves in the rock. Yeah, climber's route. You see it heading upward. Let's take a closer look at it. Wow. No, definitely not something you will ever see on Las Vegas area trails. Here's where we draw the line. Well, this is way too cool. A telescope up on the Escarpment Trail. You wonder, why is this here? Well, this is trained on the site of the November 17th, 1955 C-54 aircraft, part of the, I believe it was the U-2 program. And these were, engineers in the Air Force. And you can pause the video and see all the particulars. But here's what the plane looked like at its best. And here's what the crash looked like. And as I said, the telescope is trained on the area where that crash is. And in the afternoon sun, when you've got a lot of sun, which we don't have right now, you can actually look up and you can see the sun glinting off the aluminum wing of the plane. And by the way, we've been up there and taken extensive videos on the Mount Charleston or Charleston Peak page of Las Vegas area trails. We've been up at that crash site, but you see that area just below. There's Mount Charleston, the slope of Mount Charleston, snow covered. And you see where it begins to take a turn, level off a bit. That area, that slope, right below that area is where the plane crashed. And the remains of the plane are still up there, some of them. And by the way, that C-54 aircraft that crashed on November 17th, 1955 was on its way between Burbank, California and Area 51. And then here's a point where it looks like the Escarpment Trail is departing from this nice asphalt pathway. So let's take this, see where it goes. And the walls of these rocks above us, looking a little bit back, are just filled with caves. Who knows how far the caves go back? Someday maybe we'll come here and explore the caves. They might be just little coves like what you see above Mary Jane Falls, or maybe an honest to goodness deep cave. We just don't know till we get up there. Another great example of mahogany. You can see the curled leaf. You look closely. And here we are at the very edge of the escarpment. And this is the eastern edge. And wouldn't it be cool if this trail, the Escarpment Trail, actually continued around and behind the escarpment. We don't know, but let's find out. And here's more of that pointed leaf manzanita, by the way. Okay, well, let's just see where this goes. Well, there's that eastern edge that we were looking at a moment ago. Right there. And you can see the escarpment continues above us and around in a kind of crescent shape. Over to another edge, right over here. We'll have to see where that leads. In the meantime, here we are on the trail, continuing forward. Continuing on this escarpment trail, nearing the southeastern edge of the escarpment. Who knows, it may continue along. But, you know, what are you going to do with an escarpment other than rock climb? And you see some cables here. More routes. Yes. If you like to practice in this kind of environment, here's your spot. Have at it. Some good elevation gain over on this end of the escarpment, this lower end, and a little difference in weather to show you how weather can change suddenly in the mountains. Look at that sunny day down there. And then we circle around. We're looking more toward Harris Mountain right now, and wow, look at the difference in the sky. Yeah, this could actually let loose at some point. Well, let's continue upward and see how far we can go on this trail. Okay, now this trail with quite an ascent angle reaches a little bench, begins to switch back upward above the escarpment. So let's see where it goes. Yeah, this could actually be a backdoor route to Harris Mountain, which is above us there. Interesting. A lot shorter than some other routes. And let's just look around here. We are now actually on top of the escarpment. So the trail begins along the base and then continues. Yeah, we were looking up at that down there not too long ago. The trail continues above the escarpment. So here we go. So imagine taking this ridge line up to the summit of Harris Mountain. Looks like a possibility. Of course, we got some cliffs over here, but it looks like you might be able to skirt them on the far side. And then all the way up to Harris Mountain summit. And by the way, that other ridge leading down to the right, that is the ridge that I took on the Griffith-Harris circuit of Las Vegas area trails. But I've never taken it from this direction. Interesting out and back possibility. And then starting at Harris Mountain, at the summit up there. Let's just trace our way to Charleston Peak. Here's Griffith Peak. Now, not as clear as the clouds begin to gather, but here's the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. And right in that saddle area right down there is where the South Climb Trail meets the Griffith Peak Trail. And you can see along the south ridge of Kyle Canyon and all the way over to Charleston Peak. And there, right in the center, is the site of the C-54 airplane crash, where you can see that snowfield that heads down, and just right near the top of that snowfield is where the plane hit the side of the mountain trying to go over it. And here we are on the escarpment, the cliff immediately below us, and down below is the Spring Mountain Visitor Gateway. There you see it. Amphitheater. Yeah, you see a lot more of it from this perspective. Kyle Canyon Road behind. And, whoops, I hear thunder. Note to self, if you're going to do this trail, start out near the bottom at the Visitor Gateway and not up at the Fletcher Canyon area, unless you like to end going uphill. I usually like to end going downhill. So yeah, I would start at the Visitor Gateway and head upward. I'd head along the Escarpment Trail first. And I'd head around the lower end, and then I'd ascend to the above the escarpment where it circles around, and let's see if it actually takes you all the way around. That'd be interesting, be nice. But anyway, and then I'd descend and take the Acastus Trail. I don't know why they named a butterfly such a difficult name to pronounce. Acastus, I think. And then they went and named a trail after it. Double difficult. Okay, anyway, yeah. And who knows what the weather's going to do. Harris Mountain, Griffith Peak, and Charleston Peak. And yes, here is a view of the escarpment from above. Wow. And all loose rock. Yes, this tends to support the theory that that this is all composite rock that has been calcified together are joined together through a calcification process. And there you're looking out over the Acastus Trail and down to the Spring Mountains Visitor Gateway. And tracing the trail system from above. Yes, you start out at the Spring Mountains Visitor Gateway and then take this line descending. You descend to this area down here, and then take the Pack Rat Trail, and then take a left onto the Escarpment Trail. Take the Escarpment Trail over to the eastern end of the escarpment, and then loop above the escarpment to where we are. And then let's see what's next. Then hopefully you can descend from the other side back down to these trail connectors and then back to the Spring Mountains Visitor Gateway. Or if your goal is to head up to Fletcher Canyon picnic area where we began today on the Acastus Trail, you could take a left at the upper base of this escarpment and then continue on up the Acastus Trail. Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing it finally. Better view opening up. Let's go from Harris Mountain over to Griffith Peak, then along the south ridge of Kyle Canyon, over to Charleston Peak, and right where it begins to rise in altitude at the summit of that snowfield is the C-54 crash from November 17th, 1955. And then back to Harris Mountain. Here's a bench that came just in time. I'm going to take a break up here on the upper edge of the Escarpment Trail. Interesting when you sit down and look around, you begin to see more things. Here is Angel Peak. And then if you look down very closely along the edge of this ridge, see a little trail there? I think that's called the telephone pole trail, and it's a very rugged kamikaze bicycling trail that takes you all the way up from Kyle Canyon Road, unpaved, all the way up to Angel Peak. And then here we're looking at Deer Creek Road, which is the passageway between Kyle Canyon and Lee Canyon. And there it is descending into Kyle Canyon. So yeah, sometimes it's just nice to see all these things from above, to see where all the connections are. Charleston Lodge, And there's where Deer Creek Road meets Kyle Canyon Road. And then yes, we're hearing more thunder. Should be interesting. Then we have Earth 1 and Earth 2. On Earth 1, it's a sunny day. Heading over to Earth 2, where at any moment we could just be inundated in a thunderstorm with hailstones and all sorts of things raining down on us. Quick note as it begins to rain, just looking at Harris Mountain approaches, and there's one ridge that would take you up there, and you can see another ridge behind it, the one that's covered with snow. And you can trace that downward. Both of those ridges look good. I think the one behind is the one that I've taken before. This one in the foreground is another ridge, but it can be accessed from Kyle Canyon Road, so just a future note. And here the Escarpment Trail begins to descend. And we should be connecting with the Acastus Trail. Still having trouble with that. Connect with that trail soon. And all these potential connections up to Harris Mountain also can be found down at the base down there. So lots of things to explore. Definitely raining. Temperatures can drop suddenly. I've been up to 80 degrees, a little higher. Now I'm down to probably 50 degrees or lower. So gives you an idea what can happen in the mountains pretty quickly. And it's all right when you start at 80. If you started at 50 and ended up at 10 degrees, that would be a whole nother issue. Okay, continuing on. And by the way, below us is Eagle's Nest Loop. These trails in this area. And there's the Fletcher Canyon Trail and where it would connect right at that bend with Kyle Canyon Road. And winding down around the upper western end of the escarpment, which you can see right here. And continuing downward on the Escarpment Trail. Beautiful little loop trail. And you hear thunder in the background. Continuing to wind down the western end of the Escarpment Trail. See, we're descending toward Charleston Lodge, the Spring Mountain Visitor Gateway, where we will take a sharp left U-turn and head back up toward Fletcher Canyon campground and picnic area. A quick look at the escarpment cliffs we have just looped around. There's the western end. And they're headed toward the east. And here's the western end of the Escarpment Trail loop. Heads around behind and above the escarpment cliffs there. Loops around. And then comes out beyond this cliff. The reason I say beyond is that the cliffs extend a little bit to the right, but you get the basic idea. And it looks like we've got an access here to the Acastus Trail. So let's go ahead and take this downward, and then we'll head up toward Fletcher Canyon. See how this works. Descending the loop now. There's a look back at the escarpment. And then here are all the trail connections at the base. And then the Acastus Trail, you can see right in the center there, heading back toward Fletcher Canyon picnic area. So down we go.